Hi, I'm Gordon from Camera Labs, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate the 1080p quality of the Canon EOS R. Now, so far most of my coverage, and that of quite a few other people, has concentrated on the 4K mode with its rather severe crop. But lots of people have commented that they don't really care about 4K, they want to see what the 1080 is like. So let's start with this vlogging clip, which I've filmed in 1080 25p, and the audio is captured with the built-in microphones. Now I'm using the RF 24 to 105mm f4 lens at 24mm f4, and because the 1080 uses the full coverage of the sensor, well, that 24mm lens is acting as a 24mm, so it's looking alright in terms of coverage. I'm using optical stabilization in the lens, but I also have the camera mounted on a tripod. I'm holding two of the legs, and the third one is actually pointing out towards me and pressed into my chest. It's not very comfortable, but it does actually provide quite effective stabilization. I don't know, the lengths that we go to try and provide decent quality footage for you. Right, stick around because I've got a lot more examples to show you of the 1080p video in practice. Okay, so let's check out that full frame coverage again with the RF 24 to 105mm. Now it's a bright day here in Brighton, so it's not a motion friendly shutter speed, I'm afraid, but it does give you an idea of the coverage. So this is in full frame mode, so this is where it's delivering genuinely 24 to 105mm coverage. Okay, so now I'm still filming 1080 25p, but I've enabled the movie crop mode. So same lens, 24 to 105, let's see that coverage. So you can see that there is quite a significant reduction in the field of view. Quite handy though if you want to get a bit more reach out of your lenses without any reduction in quality, because this is still full HD 1080 quality. However, there is one caveat here that I'll mention in just a moment, and it really is that the crop isn't 1.6 times, it's a bit bigger. Dual pixel CMOS AF still works a treat in 1080p. Just tap the screen wherever you want it to focus, and the EOS R pull focuses very confidently without any hunting or searching. This is with the 50mm f1.2, the new RF version, for that very, very shallow depth of field. It also works a treat for face detect autofocus, here again with the RF 50mm f1.2. At f1.2, of course, why else would you buy this lens? Oh, by the way, that clicking that you're hearing is the autofocusing on this lens, so you may want to use an external microphone with it. Okay, how about some high ISO tests? This is the EOS R 1080 25p at 1600 ISO. And now at 3200 ISO. 6400 ISO, now 12800 ISO, and finally the maximum movie sensitivity for the EOS R when filming in 1080 25p, 25600 ISO. If you prefer to grade your footage later, you can enable C-Log. In fact, the EOS R becomes Canon's cheapest camera to offer the C-Log profile, and that also makes it an interesting B camera for use with Canon's cinema products. It records 8-bit internally and 10-bit externally over the HDMI port if you've got an external recorder. The base is 400 ISO, although I'm recording this clip at 1600 ISO. Now, so far I've only talked about using full frame lenses on the EOS R when filming 1080p video, but one benefit this camera has over full frame EOS DSLRs is the ability to use EFS lenses, and I've got one right here. This is the Canon EFS 18 to 55mm STM kit zoom. You know, the basic kit zoom that you get with most of their APS-C sensor DSLRs. Now, when you mount this on the EOS R, it automatically tells the camera to enter its crop mode so that you don't use parts of the lens that were never meant to be used on a full frame sensor. Now, you may assume that that crop factor is the same as an APS-C sensor, 1.6 times in the case of Canon, but that's not the case. When the EOS R enters its crop mode for 1080 video, it uses the same field reduction it does when filming 4K video. So instead of 1.6 times, it's more like about 1.75 times. So you actually get that really severe reduction in the field of view when you mount an EFS lens onto that body, at least when you're filming video. Okay, now I've switched the Canon EOS 18 to 55mm. Now, as an official EFS lens, this forces the EOS R into its movie crop mode. You cannot avoid this mode when you mount a genuine EFS lens. And remember, that crop factor is not 1.6 times, but about 1.75 times. So at 18mm now, it's more like 32mm equivalent. But let's go through the optical range. Now at 55mm, remember to times that by about 1.75 times. And back again. So all official Canon EFS lenses will only work in movie crop mode on the EOS R. Now, one benefit, I guess, is that when you switch between 4K and 1080 in this crop mode, the coverage doesn't change. There's no need to recompose, but I'm not really sure that's a benefit. But this only happens when you mount official Canon EFS lenses. Now, you may be able to get around this by using a different type of lens, which I'll show you just now. This is the Sigma 18 to 35mm f1.8, specifically my friend Ben's Sigma 18 to 35mm. So thanks for loaning me this, Ben, and if you want to check out his videos, go to Ben Harvey Photography, or have a look at that nice Rode Video Mic MEL review he's just done on the Camera Labs channel. Now, this is a very popular lens for videographers, a constant f1.8 focal ratio and that general purpose range. It is an APS-C lens. It is designed for APS-C sensors, so it is officially not corrected beyond that APS-C area. However, like a lot of lenses, it actually can perform a bit better than you think. So I'm just going to show you what you can actually achieve with this lens, first in crop mode and then in full frame mode, to see whether you can in fact squeeze more out of this lens than you might have first believed. Okay, now I've switched to the Sigma 18 to 35mm, which, as you know, is a crop frame lens. So I've enabled the EOS R's crop frame mode. Let's go through that range. So 18mm, which is roughly equivalent to 32mm with the EOS R's 1.75 times crop. And now at 35mm, so again with that same field reduction, about 62mm equivalent, and back again. Now, if this were an official Canon EFS lens, I would have to stay in the movie crop mode. It wouldn't allow me to access the full frame sensor. But the Sigma is an EF lens mount, so it actually does. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so now I've entered the EOS R's full frame mode, and you can see literally the edge of the imaging circle of the Sigma lens at 18mm. Remember, this lens was not designed for use on a full frame sensor. However, as I begin to zoom it in, let's see what happens. So that was 18mm actual. That wasn't applying any kind of field reduction. And as I zoom in, you'll see that vignetting gradually disappear. And then as I approach 35mm, it actually comes back a little bit in those 1080p corners. However, if I zoom back out again carefully, I reckon at about this point, the vignetting has completely gone, and this lens is at about 24, 25, 26mm. But it's actually acting at that focal length. This is not with a field reduction, and remember, this is with an f1.8 lens. So imagine this, you could in fact buy that Sigma lens and have a roughly 24mm f1.8 lens working for full frame 1080p. So I think we should see what that looks like for vlogging, don't you? Okay, so now for that quick vlogging test with the Sigma 18 to 35mm f1.8 lens, but this time mounted on the EOS R using its full frame sensor. I've adjusted the focal length to about 26mm, where, as you saw in that last landscape clip, was where the vignetting roughly disappeared on the edges, at least when you were filming with a 16:9 frame, as of course I am here for full HD video. And this is the real benefit of this lens. I know it's designed for an APS-C sensor, but it does in fact punch above its weight, and at about 26mm, it will deliver a nice clean image to a full frame sensor. Now, had this been an official Canon EFS lens, it would have forced the camera into using its crop mode. And also, another thing I should point out is that when you are filming in the crop mode, it disables the 1080, 50 and 60p. You can only film up to 1080, 25 or 30p or 4K, but it won't do 50 or 60p. However, because now I'm filming without the crop mode, I'm actually filming in the full frame mode at the moment, I have access to 1080, 50p and 60p. And I'm using the 50p mode now in order to bump that shutter speed up, because I've got that aperture nice and wide open at f1.8 for that shallow depth of field. And that is the advantage that this lens has over the RF 24 to 105mm that I showed you earlier. They're both operating at the moment at roughly the same focal length, roughly the same coverage, but this lens is at f1.8 compared to f4, so it's letting in a lot more light and allowing me to achieve much shallower depth of field effects. So I hope I've given you a taste, a flavour of what you can achieve with the EOS R when it's filming 1080p. As always, if you like my reviews, please like, share and subscribe, and check out my full reviews over at cameralabs.com. Thanks a lot. I'm off to buy a coffee now. If you really like what I do, you can treat me to one too using that link below the video. Cheers, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.